Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. We're going to have a few minutes of fun with stencils and inks today, doing some stencil lifting, so lifting colour away, and stencil layering. The process I'm about to do with these manila tags I have already done on a couple of other paper surfaces, so on some watercolour paper and on some what I think is PaperArtsy Smoothy Card. I don't know because I've just got snippets of it, but I think that's what it is. So exactly what I'm going to do now, I've already done on some other paper surfaces, just so you can see how much difference the paper you use can make to the effects you get. So those will be putting in an appearance shortly. I just want to show you exactly what I did for these. So I did a couple just using the spray stains. This is Speckled Egg, and I'm sort of keeping the spray as much as I can on the mat. You can use a splat box for this if you're feeling really nervous, but one of the things I want to do is use the left up spray around here, so that stage won't be available to you if you go splat box, because you won't really have access to the excess ink. Speckled Egg, pumice stone and faded jeans are on the mat today because I seem to be in that kind of bluey grey kind of world. Having made the front of the tag wet, it's going to curl up, so one of the ways to combat that is to just get yourself a spritz of water onto the back. If things are not moving as you think you might like them to, if you want a bit more dynamism, you want a bit more playfulness amongst those inks, you can give them a little gentle splotch of water from a spritzer, or you can spritz and flick, spritz the water into your hand and flick it at them. If there's somewhere where things are a little bit too inky, or you want to break it up, you can come back in with a different colour. So a little spritz of that will get us that. The surface of the tag is now very wet. That's going to take quite some time to dry. We can help it with a heat tool. I'm doing a little bit of removal with paper towel, but I don't want to do too much removal, because if I don't have enough ink on my surface, I won't be able to lift it up. So those I'm going to set aside to start drying. And we'll take ourselves into our second two backgrounds. So those are busy drying. I have, of course, got ink on the mat now. I'm going to give it just a little spritz of water. I don't want too much because, as I say, I want to keep things nice and inky. And then what I'm going to do is just mop it up with two more tags. So you'll get a completely different inky effect from this. It's going to look very different from the first two. And again, we'll get to compare all those when we're done. Going to pick up some more because there's so much ink on the mat. Who wants to waste it? Let's pick that up. You can do this in a number of layers, so you can dry and then add some more splotches. I'm not doing that today. We might do that another day, but I just want to create very quick backgrounds so that I can get on to my stencil lifting and layering. So these have obviously got much less ink on them. It's more watery ink. So it's going to be a different thing when we start lifting. We may or may not get any lift. But if we don't get lift, then what we can do is layer. So simple as that. And as you can see, of course, by now the colours have all mixed on the mat. So you've got much less variation of colour going on across those tags. But I like them in any case. Again, I'm going to give a little spritz of water to the back, just so that those paper fibres can start to straighten themselves out while they're drying. And then the final way I'm going to apply ink to my tag is I'm going to do some simple blending on with a sponge. Same three colours, but this time using the ink pad. So I'm starting with Speckled Egg. My Speckled Egg actually needs topping up. It's starting to dry out because I use it so much. Colour I absolutely love. But I'm just going to start getting some layers on. There's enough there to play with for today. But you can see I'm having to work quite hard and press quite hard to get that ink to come out onto here. I do think there may have been a bit of green on that sponge as well, because it's coming out quite a sort of bronzy colour. But it's all good. I'm blending other colours over the top now anyway. So this is the pumice stone, and you can see I start off the edge of the tag and bring the colour on, always rotating, and it just allows me to get ink onto the tag. Pumice stone also needs topping up, clearly. If you'd like a very quick top up your ink pad video, let me know. That's there, we got a nice application of that. And then this is the faded jeans. So let's bring in some blue. I'm going to bring that somewhere down the middle, like so. So you can, of course, dry those spritz tags with a heat tool. Just watch out because the ink will move around as you're drying it. So keep an eye on what's happening. See if there are droplets that you want to preserve. See if there are droplets you want to move around a bit more. I'm creating quite a layered look here, so I'm not going for individual patches of colour. I'm really letting them mix and blend as I go. And those layers of colour, again, are hopefully going to create some nice effects when I start to lift. So what I might be able to do, for instance, is lift some of the blue and it will reveal the greys underneath, rather than taking me all the way back to the surface of the manila tag. It might take me back to some previous colour layers. So that's quite a nice thing to make sure that you've got layers of colour. And then as you're lifting, what you'll be doing is lifting some of those layers, but maybe not all of them. I think that'll do for now. I'm going to resist the urge to do a spritz and flick, which is what I'm itching to do. Spritzing some water into there and flicking. We'll do another spritz and flick video very soon because I do love to spritz and flick. Right, I'm going to grab all of the tags and pieces of paper. So you're now going to get to see how different those effects are using the exact same technique, just depending on the paper you use. I've been having a good go with the heat tool, my inky fingers, and there are still some slightly sheeny little moist bits, but given we're going to have a chat and we can start with some of the other mop-up tags first anyway, those will hopefully be dry by the time I get to stenciling with them. So you can see those are the manila tags we just spritzed with that lovely creamy background. So the differences I'm talking about are not about colour. The other paper I've used is more white, so you get a different colour tone with the inks because all the inks that I've used so far are translucent. So they pick up some of the colour from behind. Those are the spritzed ones, and here are the mop-ups on the manila tags. So that's your first little batch. Then what I've got is the watercolour paper. So this is my usual cheapy watercolour paper. Not expensive watercolour paper where you should get a really good lift with your watercolour paints. This will be an experiment, but you can see there is a different colour tone. So having a look at that between the white paper and the manila gets you slightly different variations of the colour. You've got a lot more greeniness going on because it's mixing with the yellow tones. But you can also see the spray patterns are slightly different. The way the paper seizes the ink as you spray at it is slightly different, so that the effect you get is slightly different. So let's have a look at the mop-ups on the watercolour paper. These are really beautiful, might be my favourites, because again, the difference between the yellow colour tone behind and the white colour tone behind, but also you can see in the lifting up, and this might be to do with just slightly different amounts of water or pigment on the mat. This is why you have to play. You have to play, because those differences could be just from a slightly different set of circumstances on the mat, but also the paper is making a difference. So in that mop-up, there's still more texture available on those, but you do get really nice sort of drippy patterns as well on that manila. None of this is right or wrong. They're all just different effects you get with different papers. Let's have a look at the blended one. So the watercolour paper is obviously slightly textured, so that's going to make a difference. The colour tone again makes a difference, but also the smoothness of application is just a different thing, so that you get a slightly different look with that. Let's put you there and you there. And then the final paper surface was a bit of smoothie card, snippets of smoothie card. So that's the spritzed version, which again is moving just slightly differently on the card. There are some nice spray patterns there that have been caught in action, as it were. Here is the mop-up, which again just gives you that sense that on the smoothie card there's more of a mixing and blending going on. The ink tends to sort of seep in and move in a different way. But you could always do, as I say, another layer of that mop-up. You need to dry in between, but you could get some more texture on there if you do it a different way. And here's the ink blending on that smoothie card. So again, it's quite similar in colour tone to the watercolour paper, but again, a slightly different application of the inks. I did a bit less blending on this one, so there are more distinct areas of colour. In any case, you can see there is a difference according to the paper you use. So if you want to change your results, try changing your paper. That's step one. Let's see what we can do in terms of lifting. So I'm going to set aside again the wettest ones because they are still doing a bit of drying. So those spritzed ones can wait till later. Although given they're the inkiest, they're the ones I'm expecting the best lifting effect on, because we should get a nice contrast. When you are lifting with a stencil, water is what you want. So moisture is going to lift ink back off here. You can do that by all means with a piece of kitchen towel or a rag that you make nice and moist. If you want a shortcut, then something like a baby wipe, a nice moist baby wipe will definitely do the job. So let's start with one of those. There we go. These are unscented. And hopefully with as few extra additional ingredients as possible. I've got a variety of stencils on the mat. Some of the Tim Holtz ones, some of my own new leafy. Actually, maybe we'll start with my new leafy one, or the new minis. Oh, they weren't minis. They came as one whole stencil, but they're really 4 different designs. So I have now cut mine up to give myself 4 different nature textures. So I'm certainly planning on layering some of those in later on. Let's have some leaves. So this is the ink blended tag, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the baby wipe and just gentle circular motions, because I don't want to damage the stencil, to just lift off some of the ink from underneath. And what this should give us, especially on this ink blended one, is a lovely subtle little bit of leafy texture in the background of that tag. That's really making me quite happy. So I'm going to do some more down in this corner, just lifting up. So it's the moisture reacting with the ink, lifting the ink up again, because these inks, like watercolours, remain water reactive. In fact, they remain more water reactive than watercolours. Watercolours very often, when they've completely dried, are slightly resistant to being lifted. I absolutely love the soft effect of that. Let's go on to this ink blended one, maybe a different stencil. Let's go with a little bit of, yeah, this one. I forget what it calls itself. It was one of a batch of sort of Art Nouveau-y type ones. So let's see. I'll stick to this for now. We'll do some kitchen towel in a minute, but I'll stick to this for now as a fair comparison between these ink blended ones. So again, I'm trying to get down into, this is a much more detailed stencil, so I'm trying to get down into those little tiny fine areas. Let's see what we've got. So that's a good lift on the watercolor paper, as I would expect. Watercolor paper should do this. Even a cheapish watercolor paper, you should be able to get a reasonable lift of color. But as you see, it's not going all the way back to the white. One of the things to watch out for this is, if you're tempted to keep trying, keep going, keep rubbing and rubbing to get yourself all the way back to original white, one of the things that might start to happen is you'll start to get pilling and beading on your paper. So some papers won't take this kind of work at all. It will immediately start sort of rubbing away and disappearing. I think I'm going to try and intensify that just a little bit. But you can see the kind of really subtle faded textures that you get with this technique. It's just really pleasurable as an effect, to create a sort of softness, a misty, gentle look. So I'm pleased with both of those. I like them a lot. Here's our final ink blended one, another stencil. Let's see. Oh, well, let's go. Oh, these little leaves are going to be interesting. Let's go with this one, actually, rather than the little leaves. These are sort of thinking of these as petals, but with a bit of geometry to them. That was my, oh, that looks like a good lift. Can you see that's going really quite a long way back to white. I'm trying not to rub too hard because I don't want the paper to start pilling, but I'm just getting a nice lift on that. What a great effect. It's It's beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. You can, of course, do these in any which direction. I think on this pic, that's starting to look a bit like a Monet lily pond to me. I may have created a lily pad stencil here without realising. There you go. Who knew that what I was doing was creating lily pads to float on water? Oh, that's really interesting. Now I need to go and get some green and do this over a nice watery background to create a lily pond. That's really pleasing as a discovery. Look at that. Very good. Now, these are the mop-ups, and I'm not expecting to get as much lift. Why don't we go straight away with, let's go this one on here, because there is less ink to lift. So on this one, I'm expecting it will be an even subtler effect. And then I'm expecting when we get to the spritzed ones, the ones we direct sprayed onto, to get quite a bold effect, just because the inks are darker and more present. So yeah, that is, I mean, it's good. But there, I think what you can see is there is a little bit of paper pilling. So I will try to be a lot gentler on this one. Let's turn this so I get a slightly wetter side. But it's really very pale down in this corner, so I'm rubbing more gently this time. So I'm really looking for lifting as opposed to paper pilling. And actually that seems to be working better. How interesting. So again, you have to play to discover. That's a gorgeous effect. In fact, it's so good. I think I'm going to go for it across the whole tag, really. I really like the softness of that. I'm not looking to line it up necessarily. And I'm probably going to go for a slightly less of a lift across the middle here. But it's just getting me that lovely shadowy watercolory look. That's really pleasing. Where's another mop-up tag? Okay, this one's still slightly moist. That's interesting. Let's see if that makes a difference to what we get. So these leaves are, obviously, I drew by hand originally. So every single leaf is different on this new leaf stencil. They're all individual leaves across this stencil. So this is interesting. I'm getting much less of a lift. Maybe it's because my baby wipe is now a bit drier. This is where art and chemistry start to intertwine. Is it the relationship between water and ink? Is it just that this is now a bit drier? It doesn't feel dry to my fingertips, but it may be too dry to be picking up. Oh, because each of these is individual, replacing them again afterwards, not the easiest thing in the world. So either make a close note of where you've placed it down, or don't lift it up until you're absolutely sure you want to, because you may find it's a bit tricky to get back to where you want it to be. That's a very subtle one. But as I say, that mop-up tag had relatively little ink on, so I'm sort of not surprised. I'm now going to switch from my baby wipe to some paper towel for these. These are mop-up Manila tags and mop-up watercolour paper. I'm going to get my kitchen towel quite wet. You could absolutely run it under the tap, dip it in a bowl of water, as you like it. Right, let's go. I'm quite enjoying these petals, actually. Where did they go? All little leaves. There are the petals. I'm enjoying the geometry of that today. That's a bit of a change of tack for me. Geometrical botanicals. So as you can see on this one, there's even quite a lot of white paper left because the mop-up didn't go over the whole piece. I didn't pick up ink onto the whole piece. So I'm more likely to do some layering on this one. Oh, that's almost nothing picking up. I'm curious now to see whether, if I go back in, these petals are all slightly different as well, but they're a lot closer. So really, if you lay a different set of petals over, particularly if the effect's been as subtle as that one was, it's less of a bother getting the right one. Oh, there is look, it is coming right there in the middle. Okay, so really I'm only going to succeed here over the darker ink colours. There's very little point in me going in over that area there. I took a horizontal movement on these because the petals themselves are so horizontal, but maybe I'm better working in circles because that does get you down into those dips. Again, really subtle little layers in there, but we can in a minute do some inking as opposed to lifting, and then hopefully we'll get a different kind of result. Oh, maybe not that. Maybe let's go leaves on here and see what we get. There are some really nice little leaves in places. So you've got a variety of sizes on here. Let's see what we get in terms of lifting off the Manila tag. So again, with this one, I'm expecting, it's quite a pale application of ink. It's not very thick. I'm expecting this will be so subtle that I might not bother with it, and we'll just do some inking later. Yeah, almost no lift. In fact, I think what I'm seeing there is the sheen of the baby wipe on that there. So interesting, notice it. Very hard to get a lift if you've only got a tiny bit of ink. So I'm not going to spend time continuing to battle with that. What we'll do with those is layer some actual ink colours over them. But it's time to have a go with the thicker ink here. Let's go, I think I would like to go leafy on this one maybe. There we go. I'm going to use that same baby wipe, I think, but refresh it with a spritz of water. I think there's just something about the paper towel is a much coarser texture, and I feel like the baby wipe, even though it's lost some moisture now, is getting down into the gaps a bit better. So I'm going in with a freshly moistened baby wipe. Going to take myself round and round on these leaves and see what kind of a lift we can get. So this is, we're back to the watercolour paper here. Just seeing what I can get. I feel like there's a bit of moisture seeping under the stencil. So again, that effect is very, very soft. That's interesting. But this is what I mean about it's lifted the blue layer and it's gone back to some of the grey spritzing from underneath. So that was layers of spritzing on that watercolour paper, and it's lifted off the top layer, but it's left us a really interesting speckled leaf down below. That's a really fun effect. Let's come in from the top here, see what we get if we come down these greyish brown areas. See what kind of a lift we can get. And I think that is lifting. I think I'm perceiving a change in colour on those leaves. Again, in quite a soft, gentle way. Ooh, misty loveliness. Again, this doesn't have to be the final stage. We can come back in at any point and add layering with ink or add stamping. This is just giving us a starting point that has a lovely softness to it. I think there's some pilling going on this tag. That may be because this tag got the wettest. So here the Manila is also responding to the fact of how wet it's been. That surface slightly compromised by having been so wet. So there is some pilling going on, but what we are getting is a good lift. It's not only because I'm rubbing away paper surface, it is also lifting up ink. So I'll go for a very gentle circular motion up here, see if I can avoid the pilling whilst getting a lift. And there's quite dark ink up at the top there, so I'm hoping that will lift up nicely. I'd like to give a little bit of a lift over this brown area. Yeah, it's still got a pilling going on. When I say pilling, I mean it's like a jumper does, like a sweater, just peeling up slightly, but it's still a really lovely effect. Again, that wispy mistiness is just deeply pleasurable. So that was watercolour paper, that was the Manila tag. Let's have a look what happens on this smoothie card. So let's go for a little lift up in this top corner, see what we can get with these petals. Geometrical petals, geometry petals. I don't really have a proper name for it. The overall name that in my head, the stencil is called, because you get all four of them, is nature textures, because there's a leafy one, there's a stemmy sort of one, there's a grassy sort of one, and there's this petally sort of one, but they all have a slightly geometrical element to them. So nature textures is what I call them. I'm pretty happy with all that. I have of course got another 3 here to play with. So let's maybe take the leafy over this. So I'm going to do just a little bit more stencil lifting, and then I'm going to come back and we'll just maybe do a bit of stencil layering. So there are my final 3, with some really subtle misty leaves, another one with that Tim Holtz one, and some more lily pads, lily pads. So now there's stamping and layering that you can do over these. So this one hasn't got very much going on in terms of leafiness, but I do like the idea of layered leaves on that one, I think. So what I'm going to do is get my leaves back again, go this time with maybe some distress ink, and go very directly on through those leaves to create another layer onto this tag. You don't have to go with just one colour. If you take 2 colours and sort of layer them over each other, again you're going to get lovely variation on your leaves, just creating that lovely sort of variety in there. So a lovely softness to that. Just going to come in with maybe a couple of these little ones over on this side. Look, there in the blue, just to get to that edge of the paper. That's got a delicious softness to it now, as far as I'm concerned. This one's got not very much going on at all. Maybe another little bit of leafiness here. I'll start with the grey, I think, because I think there's something rather pleasing to me about what's going on there. So this is the pumice stone again, just enjoying that misty look. I might put a little bit of the blue into, that wasn't the blue, yeah, that was the blue sponge. So it's got a little bit of blue ink left on it, but it's creating quite a subtle little effect there. That's very nice. Let's put a little bit down here. So there's blue and grey on this sponge now. That's all good. So little layers of leaves on there. I have also pulled out a couple of oxides, just in case that seems like something we want to do. For that, I will use a different sponge though. I try not to mix up my oxide and my ink sponges, because once you've got oxide on a sponge, it will always give you an oxidey chalky look. So I'm thinking of putting some of these little leaves onto here, just in a soft pumice stone oxide. I think that's going to be quite a nice detail layer over those watery geometric petals. So just building layers, building little bits of texture. And over the top of that, I will definitely be doing some stamping, because that's going to give me beautiful things. With the oxide, I should be able to create an effect over the top of something like a dark colour, because the oxides are, as we know, opaque. So let's see if we can get ourselves some misty oxide stenciling, just to create another layer on here. There we go, that's a beauty. Might want to do a bit more of that. So this has not got terribly much going on. There was this little bit of lifting. Interestingly, it's just, oh no, I can see the little ones are there. But what I'm mostly noticing are the big petals. So it's looking like a bit of a crisscrossy affair. Should we maybe do that in the speckled egg? I'm not going to change sponges between oxides, because these are both basically grey. So I'm really fine with using the same sponge and letting them kind of mix and blend as they go. So just putting a bit of that oxide through here to see what we can get over these colours. That's another beauty. Now, of course, with oxides, the minute you add water to them, they start shifting and changing. So the oxidization happens when you put in moisture. So I'm just going to add a little bit of spritz and flick to those and let what happens happen. Let's see what else might like another layer of stenciling. That's quite nice, with the really subtle little leaves going through the middle. Shall I zoom in a bit for this? I don't want to zoom in too much, because you can see that I'm pulling from around me. I might go in with, thinking about a slightly dark layer, so maybe some faded jeans with a little pattern. So, oh, maybe something stripy would be good. Let's put in some blue stripes. into here. So these are the ones I sort of think of as stems, and they'll give you horizontal stripes and vertical stripes, and if you crisscross them you can get plaid. So that's quite a nice contrast to the organic shapes of the leaves underneath, but because these stripes are wonky stripes, they are like plant stems, it's not completely geometric. And over that, so layer number 3, I'm thinking I might want to come back in with some more leaves, but this time in maybe something like the speckled egg oxide. So let's just give ourselves some nice misty leaves over those layers. Lovely. Look at that. So now that depth is building, that kind of sense of looking deep down into something, finding more and more as you look for longer, your eye starts to pull out details and delights in the background. Sort of wondering about maybe some little leaves over the tops of these big leaves. Do them in a slightly darker colour, so I'm back to the faded jeans, and that's going to give us sort of layers of leaves falling. That's quite good. Yeah, enjoying that. Nice. And so you can see you could go on for quite some time adding layers to what's already on your tags, or these where almost nothing is going on my tags. So maybe what I want to do is just pull down some very gentle leafiness. Let's bring in the pumice stone, because I was enjoying that mix as it blended on the tag. The blues and the greys seem to be where I'm at today, probably fighting off the heat. It's not as hot as it's been in some other places. That's a beauty, just like that. But it is quite muggy today. It's feeling clammy. Let's do the same sort of thing here, but with this. Was that the blue? Yeah. There it is. Quite soft and subtle. And let's come up from the bottom, maybe a little darker, and then switch into the grey. And again, we can spritz and flick, even though it's not an oxide, you will, of course, get little bits of lifting and texture if you do a little spritz and flick, even over that stenciling. So I could go for hours, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a wonderful way to spend one's time with that creative playfulness, just exploring and discovering. And that's the way you discover that you've created a stencil to make lily pads. Who knew? It would probably never have occurred to me, or it might have taken much longer to occur to me, had I not just had this little playtime without anything particular in mind, just setting off into some playtime without judging or kind of deciding what things are going to be. I had planned to use only 2 or 3 stencils, and I've ended up using 5 or 6, I think, in the end. But there we go. So yes, it's a lovely technique, the lifting, because it gets you such a subtle effect. But then the layering over the top is what allows you to really start to build a depth and a sort of delight in those lifted parts and then the inked parts. The variation of that is really fun to play with. And yeah, just vary the pressure, vary the amount of ink you're putting on, and you can have the subtlest of subtle little layers, or you can have something really quite prominent and beautiful. I want a little bit of, I think a little bit of this, but maybe with the oxide. I think there's enough oxide on there to be doing something. Yes, there is. See, look at that. So you've got the lifted ones right next to those beautiful subtle oxide ones, and that's special, isn't it? Beautiful. grand. I'm going to stop, and I will of course dive in for a close-up so that you can have a look at some of these and what we've done with them. Thank you so much, as always, for your company on this creative journey. It wouldn't be the same without you. Do leave comments and questions down below. Give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this. And of course, tag me in. Do, if you're playing with these techniques or these ideas, or if you're playing indeed with any of my products. I always love to see what people are getting up to. So please don't be shy about tagging me in. I'm much less active on Facebook. It's Instagram is really where you'll get the most responsiveness. I try to remember about Facebook, but as often as not, I forget the whole place exists. So don't be offended if you don't hear from me on Facebook for weeks at a time, because I do just forget the place exists. There we go. I'm going to try and stop now. I don't know that I'm going to succeed. Hang around for the close-up. If you're not already subscribed, do join us on this creative journey. It's grand to have your company, and happy crafting all.